Welcome to Don't Be Caged by Your Age, Sarah. How you doing?
I'm doing really well, Andy. Thank you. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's a gorgeous day here in Boston. Please let everyone know your age and where you're from.
My age is 79, and I am from Los Altos, California. Now, I'm originally from Ohio and spent a lot of years in Connecticut, so I'm very familiar with the Boston area.
I'm so delighted that you're joining us. Sarah, please share one or two fun, surprising, or wild stories from your career so we can get a flavor of where you've been and who you are.
I think, Andy, that probably the most telling is when I left the company I had been working for 20 years. It was a really good company, it was a really good job. I had a beautiful big home in Mystic, Connecticut, and I couldn't do it any longer. I was 50, and I think women, many women in their late 40s, 50s, 60s, come to a time of wanting something else, something more, because they're coming into who they really are. And that was true for me. So I sold almost everything I had, put the few things left in the car, drove cross country to San Francisco because the only thing I knew I wanted to do at that time was live in San Francisco. So I got a one room apartment and put what was left of my belongings in my one room apartment. And people thought I was having a nervous breakdown because of everything I'd left. And now I was living in this little one room apartment with no job and no job prospects. And I was so happy. I was so happy. And so that launched me into nothing actually, but then I realized I don't want to ever work for somebody else again. So I started my own consulting business.
Oh, bravo. I love this story. Something fierce. Listeners, Mystic, Connecticut is a gorgeous shishi place. Okay. And a lot of people aspire to that. So I love that you said, you know what, this is not fulfilling me. And this is where a lot of people say, oh, she looks successful. Look what she's achieved. Yeah. But if you're not happy, you're not successful. And especially women, right, Sarah? We can do a lot of things and be great at a lot of things, what really fuels our passion, right?
Yep. And at that point, I didn't know what did. I just didn't. I just knew at that point what didn't anymore.
Thank you for being brave. And thank you for loving yourself enough to make that radical decision and move, because it's those moments that are so defining in a life and help us see in as representation for other people who are going to be tuning in and going, wow, she did that. I may need to do that too. And it's never as simple, right, as it sounds. I got in the car and went out there. I'm sure there were growth opportunities, quotes around that you had as you started to uncover and discover what fueled your passion. But I love that you chose, I'm not working for anyone else again. And there you were in San Francisco. So
Right.
enlivening, right?
Yes, it was. And for any woman who's thinking about this, I don't recommend you do it the way I did it. Take it a little slower and find something that might be the thing before you leave what you've got. But nevertheless, it is terrifying. So I did it and it was really scary. So don't think it's not going to be scary because many of us at that point in our lives have been pretty much taken care of our whole lives. Our
Right.
parents, our colleges, our jobs, the corporations, we were taken care of. And now all of a sudden, we're not going to be taken care of by anybody but ourselves. It's terrifying. So it's not easy, but it's worth it.
And it's terrifying. And that also reminds me of what I learned. I went to an all women's MBA program, which I earned in 89. And we talked a lot about what drove men, right? You know, you get out of college and they were really driven for the next 30 years. So when they hit 50, they were like, I need to slow down. Well, when a woman hits 50, she's been taking care of everybody in different ways since then. And she's been living with her fertility as well, right? The
Right.
procreate. And all of a sudden, kids are no longer the heavy duty responsibility. All these responsibilities that you've been doing, taking care of folks. And that's not to discount if you have aging parents that you have to take care of. All of a sudden, it's like, okay, what do I want? It's a natural evolution moment, Sarah.
I
And
think I think it is, and I think we need to take advantage of it. We need not to let that time slip away and think, oh, well, I'll think about that next year. No, no.
And what I've seen just in the guests that I've been interviewing, there has been those who didn't do that. There's been a depression period, even for the men, actually. But physically, women have been stopped in their tracks and forced to take a look, right?
Hmm.
And see what makes them happy, what fuels their passion, how they want to serve themselves and then the world. So, what tuned you into ageism? Did you experience ageism? What happened? Because you have created a platform, and we're going to get into it. Listeners, Sara has launched this phenomenal platform called Prime Spark, and the mission is to empower and showcase the senior women's movement. Oh, I love that word, movement. But what triggered this? What sparked your going, I'm not just going to be a consultant, I'm going to go start seeing how I can empower other women to embrace and celebrate this time in their life?
Well, Ande, I think at some point I started looking around and I realized, I've been an employee or a consultant in corporate America for over 40 years, and that's enough. And so I really was ready again to do something else. And I was in a doctor's office and was treated in a way, not medically treated, but I mean interpersonally treated in a way that was not acceptable. And I thought it was solely based on my age. And I left and I thought, okay, that's not okay. That that can't keep happening. That happens all the time to older women every day, day in and day out. And that can't keep happening. So I was at that point working with a coach because I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I said, you know what I think I want to do? I think I want to work with and on behalf of older women. And she said, oh, your golden years. And I said, no, 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 no. I want to help women find that spark deep inside that if we can either fuel it or ignite it and drive them into the future in their prime, because women are in their prime in their late 40s, 50s, 60s. And I thought, the spark in the prime spark. And that's how Prime Spark was born. And it wasn't just that event in the doctor's office. There had been a couple other things that happened before, but that was the tipping point. And I decided, okay, no more.
I love that. Listeners, have you been treated inappropriately at an office of your doctor? Because I sure as heck have. And it's worse than feeling invisible. It's almost like a pat on the head. It's patronizing. And here you are, a woman who's tuned in. You've got your life. You've been taking care of others yourself. You've been working. You've been doing all of the things. And all of a sudden, they're talking to you like you're a toddler.
Right.
And it's awful. So,
It's
listeners, let us know in the comments if that's happened to you. We need to come together and just say, okay, these types of moments have to stop. Not to mention, I'm always asked, so you're retired? Are you
yes.
like golfing? What are you doing? I'm like,
Sarah,
wow.
why don't you retire? Why don't you retire? I don't want to retire. The other thing, Ande, and I'm sure women have run into this, is um, people will tend to use endearments with us because we're older. And so I was not very long ago on an airplane, and I was getting on the airplane, and the numbering of the seats went 7, 8, 9, 10, 21, 22, 23. And I was just, what? And so the flight attendant, that was a couple people ahead of me, leaned way over and said, sweetie, the seat you want is behind you. You have to turn around and find your row.
Oh,
Would you do that with some little girl, maybe 5 or 6, maybe? And I was just furious, but everybody behind me just wanted to sit down. So I didn't make an issue. Turned around, I found my seat. But I promised myself at that point, I will never again let one of those go by.
nope.
I don't care if there's a lineup all the way back to the next city. I'm not going to let another one of those kinds of things go by.
I can just hear what would come out of my mouth. I'm
Yeah,
a
yeah,
grown ass woman.
yeah. You have to be careful because you actually you want to express what you want to express, but you also hope you can sort of educate the person a little bit.
Absolutely, Sarah. We need a lot of, I'm always into having scripts, right? What I'm going to say in difficult situations or
Right.
confrontational situations. And that would be one I would need instead of hold my bag,
I think it's
red
all
flag.
fun to say to somebody, "That's really interesting. What do you mean by that? Where is that coming from?" You know, and be curious because if I can get over myself and get over the anger of it, it's a curiosity. Where does that come from? How do you see this? What do you mean by saying that?
That's right. And one of my favorites is I shared a video of Andy McDowell getting interviewed by an Italian journalist. And the Italian journalist asked her, "So, how does it feel to have lost your beauty?" And Andy McDowell was like, "Wait, is that what you really asked me?" Because maybe there's a language thing going on. No, it was what the journalist said. She goes, "What do you mean lose my beauty? My beauty's still here. It comes out from my heart, my soul, out of my eyes into the world. It's just, come on." Oh,
Terrible question.
oh gosh. But she is a Georgia girl, so of course she was very polite and kind in her response. But where Cindy Lauper is like, "What are you asking my age for? You going to kick the tires, lift up the hood, and
Oh, that's
check the
great.
mileage?"
I love that. I love
So there's so many fun things. So you launched Prime Spark, and you brought up something I just want to touch on just a little, which is the employee mindset, right? So
Yeah.
often we've spent decades being rewarded as an employee, and having been a startup mentor forever, I would often have to coach and mentor the founders and how to let go of the expectations that you have as an employee and how to step into your owner mindset. Did that come naturally to you as you transitioned from the
Yeah.
employee to the employer and
No,
owner?
no, it didn't. I mean, I'd spent too long being an employee. And it the only reason why it was perhaps a little bit easier was the as during the times that I was working, I didn't have a big staff at all to get everything done I needed to get done. So I did a lot of stuff. And so I was used to doing a lot of stuff. Now I was not used to doing a lot of stuff. And so that's a rude awakening. You know, you don't have anybody say, "Would you mail this out for me, please?" Or "Something's wrong with my computer. Would you please call the IT guy downstairs?" I mean, ah. And so all of that is just, oh my goodness, I don't have any of those people anymore.
Oh my gosh, I look at the plants and the cats and go, "Where are my people? I got to get these things. Oh, wait, I'm the people."
I am the people. So it's a learning experience, and I don't know, Andy, that I've still got it down. I've had my company now for 20 some years, and there's still things that I think I probably could do a whole lot better if I would step more into the owner role. But it's
Instead of and we talk about this a lot in the startup ecosystem, which is working on the business versus in the business. It's really hard, and it's always a work in progress. So listeners, if you're thinking about launching your own business, don't worry about it. Yes, you always win when you launch a business, no matter what happens, because you are going to learn so many incredible things about yourself. And you may go on and start another company, or that idea may spark into something wonderful, or you may go, "Oh, hell no, this is not for me." And when you transition back as an employee, you're coming back with a lot more value for someone. But it's just such a great experience in 20 plus years, and you're still learning and trying to figure it out. That is normal, everyone. So let's talk about your platform, because let's talk about how you serve the world, what age group, what is the whole mission, vision, brand promise, everything.
Yeah, that the what I say is that the mission of Prime Spark is to change the way our society sees and treats older women. Now, that is a huge mission, to change the way society sees and treats older women. But that's what the mission is. And so I have a membership community that I love. I have a podcast. I have a newsletter, a blog. Sometimes I run story circles, which I love.
What's a
Um,
story circle?
oh, it's wonderful, Andy. I have the last one I did, there were about 8 to 10 women. I don't like it any larger than that.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked the women to divide their life into decades and to come up with a story from each decade. And so then we get together and we meet for 6 weeks. And if women are further along than in their sixth decade, which oftentimes they are, then we have to double up, like between your 50s and 70s, or between your 30s and 50s.
Right.
And then we share real stories that have actually happened in our life, and it is
Oh,
wonderful. What we find is women will say, "I don't remember anything." I mean, I said I don't remember very much of anything in my 40s. And then I heard women tell stories from their 40s, and I suddenly started remembering things.
oh
And
my God.
so it's a wonderful, warm sharing. And I started it because at some point I realized history is story. And the history I learned was all written by men. And so we have battles and generals and presidents. Where are the women? And
The her
so
the her stories.
her story. And so one of the things we did in the first story circle, didn't do it in the second one because we ran out of time, but the first one, we all found a woman from history who had been largely ignored, who deserved to be better known. And she wasn't completely ignored, or we wouldn't be able to find her at all. But she was ignored more than she should have been, given what her contribution was. And that was really wonderful. That was fun.
That is fascinating. And I'm sure some of the stories could qualify for a Shonda Rhimes show. A couple of seasons out there in Shondaland. Oh my gosh, that's so incredible. And so, how are you helping women carry the torch, right? Because you're helping them and creating opportunities and dissolving barriers against older women, but also helping them dissolve their own internalized ageist beliefs. Because so often we don't even know that we've been indoctrinated to think I'm too old for that, or I'm not worthy because now I have a face filled with wrinkles and I've got crepe skin and whatever else is going on as you're aging. How are you helping them embody, embrace, and have this another level of radical self love and then the ripple effect out into the world?
Well, I think everything you just said, Andy, is the way it actually has to start, because most of us have internalized gendered ageism. And it's not surprising because we all know we live in a real youth culture, particularly for women. It's true for men too, but it's more true for women than it is for men, because we are rewarded for our beauty and our sexiness and our ability to have children, although that's a mixed bag, because then you have them and then you're out of it. And so,
And don't
but
forget our charming, delightful natures,
yeah.
people
So,
pleasers.
yeah. So we have a lot of internalized stuff that we really need to get a handle on, because you can't start talking to other people about the impact of their ageist comments or whatever until you've worked on your own. And just what you said. So we need, what we become conscious of is all the times we say, well, that was a senior moment. I mean, you never heard anybody say, well, that was a younger moment, when somebody in their 20s forgets something.
Which they often do. They have the same challenges we do.
I had a friend not very long ago say to me, if forgetting things is a sign of aging, my 16-year-old son is much older than I am. And I thought that was so good.
It's so true. Oh my gosh. And so, that's an important part in some important stages, because listeners, just as for decades, women were faced with sexism in the workplace. I mean, right, you decades of that. Now you got to deal with ageism. Come on, right? But it's this whole understanding the language, understanding when it's happening. And boy, those of us who were raised, in the boomer generation, we learned to accept so much inappropriate behavior from men.
Yes,
We just thought that's how you did business. You know,
that,
that's just
that's just how it is. Yeah, and if you think about, I'm not equating these necessarily, but if you think about the women's movement of like the 60s and 70s, that really started from awareness. I mean, the Betty Friedan's book, I mean, it started from just a consciousness. And it took a while for us to realize, hey, there's something wrong with this. And it took a while. And
absolutely.
it just does take a while. If you grow up in that soup, then all of a sudden you have to put your head up out of it and say, I don't think this is the way it should be. But it takes a while. So I think that's where we are now. And just to continue this silly analogy, I think there are more and more heads popping out of that soup. I mean, I've only been doing Prime Spark for about 3 years now. No,
Mhm.
20. I wrote my Prime Spark book in 2020 because what else was there to do? And so I'll go 4 years. And at that point, there were some people talking about ageism. But since then, it has exploded. And there are more and more books and articles. And I find that so exciting.
I do too. And listeners, you know, this is what this show is about, right? This podcast is about bringing on people and having conversations with those folks who have shattered those age related expectations. Say, what? You did that? You went back to school and got your master's at the age of 70, and now you're doing this. And, you know, trying to help people really understand that it's not over until it's over.
Right.
and there, and the world needs us. And it's wonderful that you're bringing a voice through Prime Spark to help people understand, because the intergenerational relationships are so important. As a startup founder, coach, and mentor, I, of course, have lots that are under the age of 30, friendships, and it's reciprocity. Okay. We're equals working together. And it's the same thing that can happen in the workforce once we get that institutional ageism turned around. So they think that, oh, well, you're no longer ambitious once you hit 50. So we're going to stop investing in you, learning new things. Yeah, we can learn new things. We can take on new things. In episode 12, talking to Louis Bernstein, he's nailed it with AI. He's doing videos. We've got Sara here with her podcast, doing videos, doing all of the things. This is what we need to see more and showcase more, right? To help shift the
Absolutely.
paradigm.
I mean, I think one of the things I've come to understand is there is gross ageism in the workplace, no question about that. So far as I can tell, though, from friends of mine who are much older and in the workforce, and all of the people around them are 20 to 30 years younger than they are, they don't have so much trouble with the other workers. It's the institutionalized ageism.
Right.
But if you really, really look at the people doing the work, they're fine.
Absolutely. And honestly, I'm the under 30 crowd take delight in the elders. And I just heard that they're for students who want to save on housing in college. They're setting up so you can get room and board at an assisted living place.
Oh, that's excellent.
Isn't that great? And you
That's
just have to, do a couple of hours talking to the folks who live there as well. And it just becomes this wonderful intergenerational home. I'm so excited about that. So, I have recently learned, thanks to Judith Kernick, that we're calling this 55 to 80 period the Renaissance. And then she's saying now and after 80, it's legacy. And after 100, it's extra. But let's talk a little bit about what is the second woman's revolution. I want to know more about that.
I think it's exactly what we've been talking about, Ande.
Mm-hmm.
That we I see it that in my lifetime, the first, I mean, there were ones before with the vote and so forth,
Yeah.
but in my lifetime, the first women's revolution was in the 60s and 70s. I mean, I remember distinctly walking down Fifth Avenue in New York with a big group of women, and I'm twirling my bra out in front of me. And there are people all along the way, some clapping, many booing. And we went through that. And it was, I mean, it's not that sexism has been solved by any means, which we certainly learned in spades in the Me Too movement. But we're not where we were in the 50s. And so
No,
there's
this is,
been a
yeah,
big,
and all you have to do is watch an episode of Mad Men to
yeah,
know that we're
yeah,
not there in the 60s and
yeah,
Madison Avenue, speaking of Madison Avenue. But
yeah.
also, I remember, and maybe there's some listeners who remember when we went to high school, we weren't allowed to wear pants. And,
No,
and I remember when I went into banking after I earned my MBA in 89, and women weren't allowed to wear pantsuits. Like, come on. So commercial lenders, all of that, nobody. It was always stockings. Oh my gosh, we've come a long way, kind of, maybe.
so
But
I think the same thing is happening with
yes,
gendered ageism.
yeah,
I think that it's at sort of the beginning, just like walking down Fifth Avenue and getting booed. And there are people who, there are women who don't, I mean, I'm sure you've run into this. I have run into women who have gotten really angry at me. And initially, I couldn't understand what was wrong because I don't think I'm particularly annoying. And finally, one of them said, Sara, I don't want to think about getting older. Don't talk to me about it. And so I then, I've got it. Okay, I understand. So just like in the first in my lifetime women's movement, there were women who were definitely against the feminists. Don't take away our privilege. We're taken care of. We should be taking, on and on and on. And the same thing is true with this. I don't want to think about getting older. No, no, no. Give me all the anti-aging stuff you can. I'll spend billions of dollars on anti-aging things. So we're at the beginning of all that. And
we absolutely are. And I think that got sparked by a recent speech given by a certain football player. And I saw the dichotomy. I saw the women saying, what was wrong with that speech? And I thought, okay, we need to raise some consciousnesses
yeah,
here because
that's
they didn't see it. They thought, oh, it was a loving speech. I go, no, 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 no. But that's okay because we can change the conversation by helping raise more people up and help them become more aware. Right, Sara?
right. And I think you do that. You don't have to do it individual by individual by individual, but it has to start in the individual. It has to start
That's
inside.
right. Because listeners, we've been indoctrinated. And what I mean is your culture teaches you so many things on how to behave and believe and all those things. But one of them is women growing up as we did, boomers, Gen Xers, that we had certain roles and it was personified by the generations before us. So
Right.
it's what we saw growing up. And so we thought that is how we are successful in life, is to be that. And it took, Betty Friedan and Gloria Steinem to really help start shifting the conversation from, from that to emancipation for women. And now you're right. And as we are aging, we've had it with being invisible and not acknowledged and not valued. And it's time to take that stand. So I love the second women's movement. You are a multi-author. I mean, you have put out some wonderful books. You have this wonderful book called The Upside of Downsizing, which is all about, listeners, how to help ease the pain of a downsize through Sara's own experience. Talk a
Yeah.
little bit
Yeah.
about that, Sara.
It's downsizing your home. It's not being downsized out of a job. It's the upside of downsizing, getting to enough.
Yeah.
And I did. I went through a huge downsizing of my home. In fact, that was the second one that I've written about. The first one was when I got rid of everything when I was in Mystic and moved to California. This one was more recent. And it was painful. It's painful to get rid of stuff. And I've done some book readings with that, with groups of older people who've been in their homes 40, 50 years. And, there's a lot of things in there that are very meaningful and it hurts. And so I wrote this book as I was downsizing. And the title for me is very important because in the mid 1990s, we had a huge .com boom out here in California.
I was
And
there.
yeah, yes. And I remember sitting in a coffee shop reading about a 20-something millionaire who had just sold that company, was bored, and started another one. And I don't know if I said out loud, but I may have said out loud, how will you know when you have enough? And I thought, I just stopped and I thought, well, how will any of us know when we have enough? Now, it's true that a lot of people don't have enough, but a lot of us have way more than enough, which we learn when we start to downsize or when we clean out a closet and find
Right.
things there that we didn't even know we had that have tags still on them. So for me, the upside of downsizing was getting to enough, because I moved from a large house again to this time a 1-bedroom apartment. So at least it wasn't one room, but I had to get rid of mounds of stuff.
I know.
And when I got to this really small space with very little storage, I realized I have enough space. I don't need any more space in this. And it was a wonderful, wonderful feeling.
It's liberating, Sarah.
Oh, it is. But it hurts getting there.
It does, and I take pictures. I'm married to a pack rat, so I encourage him to take a photo or even a video if it's something that was meaningful for him, because sometimes our stuff has an experience with it, right? And we don't need it in the clutter of our lives, but we can hold the memory. And then you have this other wonderful book, Prime Spark: Women Over 55. It's Our Time. What's that about?
It's a workbook, and
Okay.
it has 30 questions in it. It's really fun. I have run groups and we meet for 6 weeks. There are 5 chapters. I mean, there's 6 chapters with 5 questions in each chapter. So each week we deal with 5 questions from the next chapter. So it's fun to work through the workbook. It's really fun in a group. So if anybody listening, it would be really fun to get a group of your friends together who are older and starting to think about some of this stuff and work through the workbook, because it sparks wonderful conversations. Even though we were supposed to talk about the 5 questions for that week, we almost never did. We started with a question and then it just spiraled off from there. So it's a
And
work.
this is how you uncover and discover, right, what fuels your
Yeah,
passion,
yeah,
and how you can reimagine this new time in your life and
right.
embrace it. Oh, that's so wonderful. And I think that all your initiatives are wonderful, but you were telling me before I hit the record button that you have a third book coming out, which I'm so excited about. Tell everybody.
I'm going to just reach over and get it.
Oh, good. I want to see the cover. Yay. Oh my gosh, let me put you into full screen here. Okay, hold on. There it is. Melly and Mr. Boo: A Story of Love and Friendship by Sara B. Hart. Illustrated by Susan M. Davis. Tell us
And
about it.
and just look at these illustrations.
Oh, beautiful.
It is,
Watercolor too.
she did an absolutely gorgeous job.
Gorgeous. Listeners, if you're listening to this on Spotify, Apple, wherever you tune into podcasts, you can hop on to Ande Lyons on YouTube and find this episode with the actual physical book. That's wonderful. And what prompted you to write that? That's a children's
Yeah,
book. You've been dealing with
it,
such hard issues.
the book is available on Amazon if anybody's interested. The reason I wrote it, because the book is written around 2 poems. One is for Melly, who was my cat from some time ago, and the second one is about Mr. Boo, who's my kitty cat now. And I wrote the Melly poem probably in 2004 or something like that. And I tried for years to get somebody to illustrate it, and it just never worked. And so Susan Davis, who's a friend, said she would do it. So I wrote a story around the poems, and then she did this wonderful illustration of the book. And it's important for any mother or grandmother or aunt or neighbor or whatever who might buy it for a child to know that in the book, the one kitty, Melly, dies. And I say she dies. I don't talk about rainbow bridges. I say she died. But then Boo comes along. And so it ends very happy. But I think I hope it will be very helpful to a family and a child who has lost a pet or has a pet who probably, hopefully, will die before the child does. And
Mm-hmm.
I've also watched some friends who've walked in and say, "What is this?" And they start reading it and they don't stop. I can't get them to stop. And so, even though it's for children, for any of us who have furry friends who are important in
Yeah.
our lives, I think, I mean, I hope that it's helpful for all of us because losing a pet is hard.
It's
It's
heartbreaking. I always tell people what you feel is the loss of their presence. There is a hole where their presence used to be.
yes. I mean, they are there all the time.
Yeah.
They're there all the time. And then all of a sudden they're not.
Well, thank you for writing, Melly and Mr. Boo. I think it's wonderful. Listeners, I'm going to have the links for all of these books in the show notes, all the links where you can find Sara, all of those good things. But I have a few more questions because this is a remarkable woman, right, listeners? We want to get everything we can out of her while we can here. And so, as we are looking at how to navigate this time period of past 55 in our lives, what are your top 3, 4, 5 favorite resources other than your own? And you can absolutely, anywhere on Prime Spark, of course. What are these resources that can best help folks to thrive after 65?
Yeah, Ande, I know your podcast and I thought you might ask me that. So I actually spent some time thinking about it. And I have 4 books. And then, as you said, I would invite people to go to my primesparkwomen.com website. You can't do any better than This Chair Rocks by Ashton Applewhite.
Oh, she's wonderful. I follow her on LinkedIn.
Yeah, Ashton Applewhite, This Chair Rocks. It's to my knowledge, it's one of the first books that was written on ageism, and she is brilliant. She's been doing this for a long time, and that's a Bible. Then Women Rowing North. I really like Rowing, Rowing, Women Rowing North by Mary Pfeiffer, who wrote, it just went out of my mind. It was for teenage girls.
Wow.
Anyway, this is a wonderful book, Women Rowing North. The third one I thought was Unbound. It is sort of a kinky book, but I think it is liberating. And I don't know how you say her name. So it's Keisha Urbanic.
Uh-huh.
And I haven't read this yet, but I've just got it. It's brand new and it's on my next read pile. There are a lot of things on my next read pile. Ageless Aging by Maddie Duckwald.
Okay. This is wonderful. This is a nice lineup of books, right, listeners? I'm going to have links to all of them. I'm going to have their titles, authors, links where you can hop on Amazon real quickly to get them in the show notes on wherever you tune into podcasts, as well as on the Don't Be Caged by Your Age website. Oh my gosh, Sara, any last thoughts that you'd like to share with listeners on how best to, navigate this time period, embrace aging, age out loud, and feel good about who you are and who you be at this stage?
Yeah, just really take a look inside. What are your internal ageist beliefs? Are you too old to start that? Are you trying to cover up wrinkles? Are you thinking of having surgery? I mean, I don't care what people do. If it makes you feel better, do it. But think about what you're doing. And don't let any remarks from now on that you or anybody else makes about aging, don't let it go by. Call them on it. Just don't ignore it. It'll be a difficult moment perhaps, but it'll be an instructive moment for them, and it will be an empowering moment for you. And a simple thing to do is don't buy greeting cards that are making fun of us. There are so many greeting cards that are, quote, funny, that are actually making fun of older people. Don't buy them anymore. Ever, ever, ever. Don't ever buy one of those cards. Even if when you first look at it, it's sort of funny. Think about, we wouldn't have racist cards that are, well, sort of funny. I mean, we just don't do some things anymore, but we still Older people still are just an open market, and we can just make fun of them all we want. So don't do that anymore.
Thank you
And
for that, Sara.
be so proud of your age. We're so lucky to have the gift of aging.
Right.
So many women in this world don't have the gift of aging, and we do. Lucky us.
Lucky us. Dance. Move your body. Celebrate your age instead of hide from your age. I love that, Sara. How can people find you
Well, the
and
best
follow
place,
you?
yep, the best place is primesparkwomen.com. They can also do my email, which is Sara Hart, all run together, SARAHART, at heartcom.com. I named my company before the .com era. And so when .com came in, it became heartcom.com. So it's Sara Hart at heartcom.com. A little redundant, but
Hey,
there you go.
it's been around that long, and it's hard to believe that, geez, the .com has only been around for 20, 30 years. So, yeah. Oh, Sara, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today. It's just been, right, listeners? This has been, I just don't even want to stop. It's been so delicious. Be sure to follow Sara everywhere she goes. I have all the links here. Please reach out and say hi. Feel free to email her. Find out how you can have a story time as well with your friends, and certainly with her book, just for thriving after 55. And listeners, more importantly, please remember you have so much to give. Don't let those internalized ageist beliefs prevent you from pursuing new dreams, new opportunities, and new hope, right? For this wonderful age that you're at and this wonderful stage that you're at. You are beautiful. Hop into my YouTube feed and check out the shorts that I share there. There are women in their 60s, 70s, and 80s, and the comments are all about how beautiful they are. So remember, you too are beautiful, and you can feel confident at this age in your ability and your visibility. Thank you so much, Sara, for joining me. And listeners, until next time, I'm wishing you a delicious day everywhere you glow. Cheers from Boston. Listeners, I'm so grateful you carved out time to tune in and grab the gems from this delicious conversation. Be sure to hop on over to Don't Be Caged by Your Age on LinkedIn or Instagram to share your thoughts about ageism and unretirement. Because in this space, your age doesn't define you, it refines you. If you are inspired by a story you hear, it would mean the world to me if you would subscribe, share, rate, and review the podcast. To receive an alert whenever a new show is posted, please join the Don't Be Caged by Your Age newsletter. Every month, you'll receive links to the podcast and helpful resources for creating possibilities for your unretirement days. Thank you for tuning in. I am so excited to hear how you found ways to thrive after 65. Waving from Boston, cheers.